Hi everyone, Andrew from Nimbus Maps here. Today we're going to look at 3 ways we can assess an opportunity with Nimbus Maps. Today we have an opportunity which has been identified here. We have a sort of small house on a large plot. We want to investigate the potential for this opportunity. By clicking on the title itself, we bring up the information panel, which is going to give you this key information around how big the area is. You know, it's over an acre. This particular plot here. Not only that, things like the price paid information, planning history in the area, we can see what's been going on. There's nothing on this particular plot itself. And also those key constraints. Is it listed? Is it in a flood zone? Is it in a greenbelt area? And it's a no to all of those. So, you know, we've sort of, on a very quick glance, it's looking pretty good. In the right-hand side, under that location analysis, you can, using the planning policy section here, as well as the sort of technical and the market section, you can look at some of those constraints on a visual basis. So is this building listed, for example? You know, we can see the nearest listed buildings are over here. So probably not going to have too much of an impact on any development here. Is it in a flood zone? Obviously, we know from the info panel it's not, but we can visually see that. And likewise, is it in a sort of conservation area, for example? We can maybe sort of zoom out a little bit further, and we can actually see that the main road area here is just loading in that conservation area. So we seem to be away from that as well. Absolutely perfect. That's a way of then really understanding the sort of almost the technical and sort of things that are going to affect that planning application. But obviously we need to understand, has there been any planning applications here and the surrounding plots as well? By toggling on the planning section, we can now see these red dots appear. The red dots are residential applications. By clicking on that red dot, it brings up this little info box here. And we can actually see there's a pending application for the demolition of the existing dwelling and erection of 2 dwellings. So, which is quite interesting, given it's one of the sort of smaller plots within this sort of area here. Potential opportunity, again, that we could even get sort of 4 or 5 in here. We've also got some applications next door. And this is an outline application for 2 dwellings to jump in next door. Again, access looks a little bit tight, but obviously, clearly someone is working through there. One's withdrawn, and actually one's been granted, and that was in 2021. So actually a really good example that someone has managed to get planning in and around this area. We can't have a visual look, unfortunately, at this, so that the Google Man hasn't gone this far. The closest we can see will be from the main road. So that probably suggests we've got a bit of a private road down here. It is a private road, so again, we might then have to factor in working with this private owner to facilitate access to any development or any increase in development further down here as well. But what we can do with this application is then look up the details. You know, for the one that was granted, we wanted to see what they submitted, what kind of comments were made, was there a lot of objections, but they just managed to get it through. We can find all that information generally in the document section here, which looks like we have to click this link, and it takes us through to all the documents, which will then have all the comments against that particular site. And clearly my internet connection is running slow, but fundamentally that's the way to find that information from that planning authority. The final thing is then understanding values in the area. What are we going to sell these houses for at the other end of it? And therefore, what could we potentially offer this particular landowner for values? There's a sort of high-level view and then a more detailed view. So the high-level view will be toggling on the average residential value per square foot. And by toggling this on, and we can sort of zoom out, we can get a feel for the values in this area, or we could click on anywhere within that coloured area, and we can see here it's coming out at £307 per square foot is the average. What we can do is zoom out even further, and we can see, if I just take all those planning spots away, where that sort of sits relatively to the rest of Bedford where we are here. And we seem to be in probably the slightly nicer part of Bedford. So at least we know that we're sort of in the good part of Bedford, and therefore the decent values. However, when we want to then get specific comparables to be able to really understand what we're going to sell those units for, that's then when we go into the comparable section, residential comparables. We can set our filters to show us exactly what we're after, and then we can toggle those on there. So we toggle those on, we then can zoom out slightly, and we now get to see all the values in and around that area as a pound per square foot and what is being sold in the last 12 months of any property type. We can obviously filter those down. If we're going to put in some detached housing, we can filter that down, and maybe we want to only look at the actual prices themselves. We can change all of that, and maybe we want to look at the last 18 months. So now in the last 18 months, from what we can visually see here, we reduce this down, we can visually see it's actually coming out at £347 per square foot. So above the average for this area. So that's going to show us that, you know, in the last 18 months, detached houses are actually selling for £350 a square foot. So already we're winning on that appraisal in terms of what we could generate from this particular site. And by clicking on any one of these particular properties, we get to bring up the details here to see, you know, what was that price it sold for and what was the pound per square foot. And you have the fine particulars to go through to Rightmove to then get those particular details, to then have a look at maybe what it was like internally. Did it have a good spec? So you can make sure then you're starting to get your spec right as well. So that, in a nutshell, is 3 particular ways of assessing a potential opportunity, looking at the constraints, looking at the planning, and looking at the values in a particular area. Thank you very much.